Okay, so it's called Occult Feminism, The Secret History of Women's Liberation. And so Amazon is saying like core themes of the book would be hidden history and occult influences. Wilson traces feminism's origins to early pagan religions and occult beliefs, highlighting practices like seance and magic rituals. She didn't talk about this a ton in the interview, so I don't know how much that's like a part of the book. And Wilson examines the paradoxical decline in women's happiness despite societal advancements and workforce participation. I guess her book also has like journal prompts and
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah, to like help a reader explore their own beliefs, which I thought was kind of interesting. And then she also talks about some of the historical figures and practices in early feminism, talks about some of the like Marxist influences, and basically goes into, I don't know, it's sort of the idea of history is written by the victors, like maybe the people who wrote about feminism wrote about it in the best light, and maybe some of the figures weren't necessarily as kind and benevolent as they were sort of written to be after the fact. Welcome back and happy Tuesday, turkeys. How long have we known each other?
We've known each other for 2 decades.
I am not apologizing for who I am or what I like or the people that I love.
How do I be a wife? How do I be a mom? And how do I be myself and all of that? You didn't see that coming, did you?
Good morning. Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday, turkeys. It's coffee time. It's a coffee day.
This week is brought to you by Kaylee listened to a podcast and then made Kayla listen to it. So now we can use it to make chats. Let me set the scene. Her name is Rachel Wilson, and she wrote a book called Occult Feminism. I'm going to just really quick read like the Amazon jib-jab summary.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that would be helpful for people to set the stage. And also we didn't read the book. We listened to her talk about the themes of the book, to be clear, just to be fair to the author. Also, in no way am I trying to analyze the author. I just think it brought up an interesting topic of discussion. Okay, let's just shut up and read this. Okay, so it's called Occult Feminism, The Secret History of Women's Liberation. And so Amazon is saying like core themes of the book would be hidden history and occult influences. Wilson traces feminism's origins to early pagan religions and occult beliefs, highlighting practices like seance and magic rituals. She didn't talk about this a ton in the interview, so I don't know how much that's like a part of the book. And then the main theme that I feel like she touched on was a critique of modern feminism. The book questions whether feminism truly liberated women instead dismantled traditional structures that provided stability, ultimately leaving women more vulnerable in modern society. And Wilson examines the paradoxical decline in women's happiness despite societal advancements and workforce participation. I guess her book also has like journal prompts and
oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, to like help a reader explore their own beliefs, which I thought was kind of interesting. And then she also talks about some of the historical figures and practices in early feminism, talks about some of the like Marxist influences, and basically goes into, I don't know, it's sort of the idea of history is written by the victors, like maybe the people who wrote about feminism wrote about it in the best light, and maybe some of the figures weren't necessarily as kind and benevolent as they were sort of written to be after the fact. So anyway, I pestered Kayla and bribed her into listening to it, even though she's busy. And it started because I listened to it, and then I went and journaled about it because it was just hanging out with my head. And then I bribed you, and now we're doing this.
It was interesting.
Now we're all up to speed.
Any topic with occult in it is great. And that doesn't mean it has to be like weird or whatever, but like just like kind of what you said, like maybe some ritualistic and maybe some ancient, not mystery, but just the unknown or the, so I thought it was interesting. There was a few things that I was shocked about. And then I've been processing as well, so I'm curious your thoughts. I'm very curious your thoughts.
Yeah, I went to text them to Kayla, and then I deleted it. But you know how your iPhone tells you that you unsent a message, and I know you can't deal with that knowledge. So I told you that I unsent it because I didn't want to give you any information, because I didn't want you sitting on edge wondering why I unsent you something.
Thank you for that. I didn't actually notice. I didn't see the thing that said Kaylee unsent a message.
Okay, well, I didn't want to freak you out. I was going to look up the definition of occult because I thought it had something to do also with being hidden.
I think you're right.
More like that word also can mean hidden in addition to mystical, supernatural, magical, that kind
Yes,
of thing.
I agree.
So that was one of my takeaways, as she was saying that she was looking into the actual, like, the spiritualism of some of the people that were involved in the early feminist movement. But then she also was looking into the hidden history that's not
Mhm.
normally talked about and kind of the dual meaning of that word occult. I will also say, okay, just my initial impression was irritation. And I don't know. But I am bothered, not always, but I try when I'm bothered by something to listen to it all the way through with an open mind because I don't want my knee-jerk reaction to be my eternal reaction. I think what was initially off-putting to me was the insinuation that women having the right to vote was a net negative, which I'm like, I can't. Maybe part of it's also that this is the world that we live in, so I can't imagine any other world. But that was the initial part to me where I was like, I don't want to not have choices.
What I found interesting about that part was the question was asked, well, how did giving women the right to vote basically make, like, this completely turn the economy around to then nowadays make it that you probably have to have a two household income? It was just like, it went from this one change caused an entire whole situation.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to believe that we could have just earned the right to vote and maybe not press so hard on everything else. And like, we could have had a say here and there when we wanted to be involved, but we had at least the option.
Mm-hmm.
And that didn't automatically snowball into where we are today. No,
Yeah.
I didn't find it clear the correlation. However, I thought it was interesting that there was people that voted to not want to vote. And
Yes.
whoever was in charge, I forgot the the who it was, but they're like, "Well, we're gonna actually take away your vote to vote on the thing because we want you to actually vote, and you're voting no. So we're gonna not let you vote to say no because we want you to say yes. So we're gonna take your
Yes.
vote away so that you can vote." I thought that was interesting.
Okay, let me say this. I think that her point of view is an important opinion in the landscape of talking about women's rights, women's history. I really liked that she pointed out that not every single woman in America wanted the right to vote initially, for
Mhm.
whatever those reasons were. So it's not correct to assume that all of them did. I also really like that she pointed out, because I had this kind of idea in my head. I think a lot of modern women look back and think, oh, these poor women were so oppressed and controlled and had miserable lives, and everybody's marriage was terrible and everything was the worst, which
Mhm.
I am certain that there were people who were miserable and did have terrible marriages and who were more vulnerable because of their lack of the ability to have property and things like that. But I also think it is important to remember that I'm sure there were plenty of healthy relationships and solid family structures and people who were not being taken advantage of. Like, it wasn't every woman in America was just living this terrible, miserable life of
Yeah.
abject horror and suddenly everything got better. Like,
Yeah.
I do think that was worth pointing out because I think an unintended consequence of the women's liberation movement was to look back and say women who stayed home and raised their children and took care of their home were miserable because that's a miserable thing to do. And I feel like that's
Mhm.
an incorrect conclusion.
Right.
That makes sense?
No, yeah, 100%. And it's interesting because I'm sure just like back then, a lot of women's roles was housework, which was work, right? They're
Mm-hmm.
doing the garden, they're farming the food, they're taking care of the house, they're teaching the children. It's a lot. They're involved in the community.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure people, there was a handful of women that didn't want to do that and they wanted to go do other stuff. She talks
Mm-hmm.
about that too, I think. But and then if you flip it to today, it's like most of us are working, and there's a handful of people who are kind of doing more traditional things. But I don't know if it's just a cultural shift or if again, it's that pendulum where it
Mm-hmm.
swung so far in the other direction. Like, I'll even say for myself, yeah, I would maybe sometimes not be in the corporate life and just be at home with my family and spend time taking care of my house and cooking and cleaning. And
Mm-hmm.
that sounds crazy when you say it like that, but I feel like there's more women today that would rather just go back a little bit to the middle or even just a little bit farther out from the outswing we've done. But
Mm-hmm.
in the economy that has now shifted so much, it's hard to do. And I think that was her point.
Yeah. I
Uh,
think that's why I was saying, like, I think her opinion is a great thing to have balance. The opposite side of that, that's very much like you have to work, you have to go to
mhm,
college. Because she shares that in her own story of, it was her mom's worst nightmare that she didn't go to college and that she had kids young and all of that.
mhm.
Well, young, like within your peak fertile years.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the messaging that if somebody wants to have kids and gets married earlier, wants to have kids first, it's not correct to say you're never going to have a career or you're never going to do anything with your life if you have kids first and then go to school second.
Mhm,
And I think that I'm hoping like our culture at large is getting to a point where we are more interested in giving people the choice and creating a situation where they can have a choice, which includes raising children
mhm,
or homesteading and those kinds of things that are outside of the traditional money-making economy, and that we include that with equal amount of encouragement and importance as women going to college and finding like a traditional 9 to 5 work job or trade school, whatever the case may
mhm.
be. Like, I'm hoping we're getting back to a place of appreciating that. I don't know what the right word is. Saying homemaker sounds weird, but
Tread wife. No, I get it. It's like just not having to go the classic route of higher education to some kind of job where you're more away from home than you're at home, if that's what
mhm,
you want. I think there's actually more things that I agreed with, but then there's some things I disagreed with. What I would love is just because like today, some of the people that I maybe don't personally know, but I follow on Instagram. I don't know their actual personal lives, but they're very much advocates of health and homeschool and homesteading. And they're very involved with the community and the culture and the politics
mhm,
because there's so much that affects those things nowadays. And
mhm,
so the fact that they have the ability to go protest and go speak and go talk to representatives and vote is
mhm,
huge. So I
mhm,
love obviously, I'm not gonna be like, "Yeah, let's go back and just not be able to vote." That's silly to me, and I don't know, like, in today's day and age, we wouldn't be able to not have that option. There's too
mhm.
much involvement, especially with moms and women being a lot of the consumers. Anyway, like, we have a lot of decisions that we make, and I feel like that's important to be able to have a say in it, so
Yeah.
I would just like more of a mix of things. And I guess my point is just maybe swinging back into it doesn't even have to be the middle, just a little bit farther from the outside and just let people have the choice and help set them up to make those choices.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that to me, and again, this might just be my corner of the algorithm, but it feels like people are starting to appreciate raising children, maintaining a home, like taking care of your family, and the unpaid labor that is involved in those things as something that's valuable and not something that's like you're a trapped and downtrodden
Hmm.
housewife. And I, being married, have a different appreciation now than I did when I was younger of like, oh, I want to take care of this person. Like this doesn't I'm not making him dinner because I have to and because I'm
Impressed.
like, yeah, no,
Yeah.
nobody said that ever. And I enjoy knowing that I can make his day better by packing his lunch,
Hmm.
just stuff like that, which probably if you had asked 20-year-old me, couldn't have imagined. So I do think there's some of that. Like, I think some people who are very anti every woman needs to go to work, like, people who stay home. I don't even know that there's that many people who truly think that, but I think
Hmm.
anybody that had a really loud opinion that way probably just isn't in a situation where they feel like they have a family that they wanna care for and tend to,
Right.
or they lived in a really controlling, really shitty situation
Yeah.
that was not the way that it should be, which is also fair, which I have like two other side points. One, I really did like the point that she made of like the conspiracy theorists in me, will
100%.
always like jump on, but kind of talking about how women being in the workforce has now basically like doubled the GDP. And now we are out of the home. So we are making an income, and then there's income taxes. So like now there's another person to tax. And then you can't raise your own children. So you have to put them in daycare. So now you're paying a business that's paying another person, and they're paying taxes and like cleaning services and lawn services, like all of these other things. And it was interesting hearing her say that we've outsourced a lot of the domestic work to other people because society has sort of looked down on that as like, I'm too busy or I don't have time, and kind of lost the value in maintaining your home.
Yes.
Again, going back to like cooking dinner, I always do our laundry. He finds doing laundry super annoying. I don't find it annoying at all. Like, I am happy to do it. Doesn't bother me. I put on a podcast, I fold stuff. Like, nothing about that is irritating to me or weird. Again, he didn't like tell me that I need to or I'm gonna, get my credit card taken away. But he also manages a lot of the financial stuff and then I don't have to worry about it. Like everything it goes back to being a partnership.
Yeah.
But
well,
I thought that part was interesting.
To stay on your little conspiracy theory section, because that's what really grips my attention. It's not just the financial benefit. If you really want to dive into a deeper layer, maybe like a medium or dark roast, as in our last podcast that we talked about, you aren't at home with your kids. So you're basically having to send them to daycare or to public school unless you can afford private school. And so basically you're outsourcing your child's education, who is the future of our country, and letting the government teach them and the government have such a big hold on them. And that's what really is interesting to me. It's like, yeah, get them out of the house.
Sorry,
your
my dogs.
But also it's like, no, you shouldn't serve your husband Christian morals. You should go work and be independent and a boss babe. But typically 99% of us have a boss who is probably 70% of the time males, hypothetically. So you're still having to talk, you're still having to serve or listen to or take instructions from a man, which is so weird.
Dude, that part made me laugh.
I know,
the whole thing, and I think she had an example when she was talking to the podcast about like a Republican representative basically scolding her and being like, you're not participating in the GDP. And I don't know why everybody has such a hard on about the GDP. If our country made more money and then it paid me back dividends, I get it. Like my stock benefits because it benefits. Like, okay, this almighty GDP thing is starting to freak me out a little bit because I feel like I keep hearing it in the weirdest context. Yeah, dude, that was so interesting. And I do appreciate the people who are saying, and this has been going on too for a while from multiple voices of like, you can't do everything. Raising, especially I've watched multiple friends like raising young children and working a full-time job and like maintaining a house. Those are the 3 full-time jobs. And then like throw an aging parent in there because a lot of us are being sandwiched. It's too much. And I do think that men because it just requires so many people's lives require a 2-income household, that I think a lot of men have become much bigger partners in child raising and taking care of the home and all of those things, which I do think is lovely. But again, unless you're adopting or like having a surrogate, there is a physical toll that happens on women's bodies giving birth and raising babies that is different than men. Like you can't, there's things that you can't share. It's just not possible. So that part is also interesting. And I mean, we've talked about this before too, like other countries having paid leave that's much longer than what we have here. Like there's some other things too that could be a lot better. But
there's some jobs that like want women back in like 2 to 4 weeks.
It's so gross.
What?
It's so crazy.
You're still bleeding. I'm sorry. That just pisses me off.
I know. And I do think it's important to tell women, especially women who are working. And I think a lot of women don't have a choice. Like, I mean, Jason and I have talked about this numerous times. Like, there's no way that I could not work for any length of time and have kids. Just not, other than like the normal 12-week thing. It's just, but then it's a lot. Like, I tell my coworkers that all the time, like, you are having the life force drained out of you at work. You're giving intentionally because that's the kind of job that we're in. But then you still have to go home and be present for multiple people. And that's a lot. And I'm happy that people are talking about it and are at least saying, like, you can't do everything 100% because you just can't. Like, having kids means sacrificing something somewhere. Anything does. Like, you only have a certain amount of time and energy. So if you have to work, then you're going to sacrifice some of the time that you would spend with them when they're young because they have to go to daycare. And you're probably going to sacrifice some of your like sharpness at work because you're not going to be able to sleep all the time at night, especially when they're young. And maybe some of it is us like collectively letting ourselves off the hook. And hopefully conversations that are started because of her book at least lead some people, especially if they get married and they're talking about, like, what do we want to do next? Giving people the opportunity to say, okay, we don't have to set our whole lives up to be two incomes necessarily. Like, if this is our goal and we want to have kids, maybe people are feeling more empowered to find creative ways to set themselves up so that someone can stay home for the earlier years. And, like she said, when your kids are older and they don't need you as much, there is a lot of opportunity to get, to go back to college or to start a different career. I also think that you can be extremely educated nowadays and be mentally involved in a lot of things without sitting in a traditional college role. And I think there's value in families not pushing people immediately into college because there's a pipeline for sure of like, you go to high school, you immediately start college. If it's not paid for, you're immediately accruing debts. And then when you get out on the back end, you feel forced. I just did all this. I have all this debt. Now I have to enter the workforce. Like, you're incentivized to push off having kids until the time when it's now like biologically harder to do that. And if that's what people want to do, by all means, they should do that. But I think we need to be better about not like poo-pooing women who delay some of those choices and choose to have kids earlier. And then as a counter argument to that, if I would have married the person I thought I should be with at 22 and had kids with them, I think I would be miserable right now.
Probably.
Do you know what I mean? Like, there's also part of me that's like, I am a healed and different version of myself now that I have gone to therapy and had some education and met the right person in a stable marriage. Sometimes I think like, hey, it would have been cool if I could be at this point when I'm 25 and maybe our goals would look different, but I'm going to be 35 and biologically there's going to be some different. I am 35?
No, we are going to be.
Yeah, we're going to be 35.
Boggles my mind every time we talk about it.
Anyway, I keep talking in circles. I just think it's both. But I'm happy to hear the overall appreciation for motherhood and raising a family and acknowledging how hard it is to do both. And I don't think we need to shit on people for any of their choices. Anyway, were you going to say something? I just rambled.
No. Yeah, it's interesting because as much as I am who I am because of all the things that were set into motion in our culture from starting all the way back then when she started talking about it, sometimes I think, man, why did you push so hard? I would rather not have to get up and go to a job. I'd rather be home with my babies. Like, and that's where it's just kind of funny because it's just like with anything, you want certain things and you want the equal rights, even though we're not the same. And then we just were like, we just push so hard. And now I feel like I don't even have a choice. And that's where, again, just swing back into the middle of it. But it did make me think, and the history behind it was interesting. So I am happy that people are talking about it more. I think it's definitely a discussion that people talk about more. And I think it's good so that people who are younger can start thinking about those things. Because we weren't at that time, I don't think.
Exactly. It did not feel like a choice to me. And kind of like what she was saying, the idea of taking a gap year, would have been like, oh my God, the world is over.
Yes.
You're going to never be educated. You're going to be tied to a man. And I will also say that on the flip side, all of this is like lovely when you're in a healthy relationship, but there are also things where the less rights that women had that does make you more vulnerable. And like for all of this to work, like men have to be better. Like, men have to be good people who are looking out for their family and who are not being selfish and are willing to self-sacrifice and make that kind of support for this to be possible. But like you said, I just think it's important for people to have choice. And I want raising kids and having a family and setting yourself up to maybe be a single income home early on to raise young children. Like, I want that to feel like an option for women and for society at large to value that in measure with being the boss babe. And I, in general, don't like the dinkwad culture of shitting on having kids. That's not everyone, but I think there are some who are like, ew.
Yeah.
And that is gross. On the flip side, I do feel like sometimes now we're getting some of the, like, you don't have kids, what's your purpose?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, I think all of my takeaway is it just needs to be a good reminder for women to support women, and that we should have a choice of all of the choices and not feel like you have to do an education pipeline to a workforce if that's not what you want to do necessarily. At least know that you can like pause and have a larger discussion and the world's not going to end. And that doesn't make you like, you're not shitting on the women before you for helping you have the right to vote by choosing to stay home and raise your children.
Exactly. Yep. Let's just have some common sense and
Be
open
nice.
opinions and not judge people and just think and do what you want.
And until next time.
Love you. Bye.
I love you. Bye.